Today I get to speak with Grant Writing Simplified host, podcast guest, Teresa Huff. She's the host of the Grant Writing Simplified podcast, a TEDx speaker, and a go-to expert in nonprofit strategy. She helps nonprofits triple their funding and maximize their impact. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about how we got into our businesses, how she got into grant writing, her journey to the point where she's at today. She has a master's in education, and so do I. So we've teamed up really well. But Teresa uses that master's in education and over 20 years of experience in writing, special education, and business to help nonprofit leaders take their skills to the next level. She also mentors grant writers, and through her interactive fast track grant writing program, she's available for university level credit. So today I'm great and I'm super excited to be bringing you Teresa, and I think you'll really have a lot of great takeaways from our interview. So stay tuned. Hello, darling. Welcome to Business Building by Design. Do you want increased sales and to scale your small business to a new level? Do you find yourself up late at night worrying about how to make more money and customer retention? Do you wake up with big ambitious goals only to feel frustrated and like you're spinning your wheels and it's not getting anywhere? Well, hello, I'm Emily, and I'm here to help. I too have felt frustrated and like I was running in circles, only to be right back where I started. I wanted to create more income, have a successful, sustainable business that I could count on, without feeling like I was working myself to death. I thought, there has to be a better way. I've learned the secret sauce to growing your small business, and I'm thrilled to share it with you. In this podcast, you'll find tips for attracting new customers, strategies for achieving your financial goals, and connecting with other women entrepreneurs just like you. So put on your walking shoes or grab that kombucha and let's go. Okay, so Teresa Huff, and she is the writer and producer of Grant Writing Simplified, and she is here today with me, and we're going to be talking about Teresa's story and how she got started in grant writing and how she got started in her podcast and what she does with that and how she's helped so many millions of collected so many millions of dollars for schools and nonprofits. But Teresa, welcome to the podcast. I'm so happy that you're here, and I look forward to talking to you today and sharing with our listeners. So tell me a little bit about tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, years ago, I started as a special ed teacher, and I didn't mean to be a grant writer at all. Had no clue what it was, really. That's how a lot of people are, I think. And so then when we started a family, I wanted to stay home with our kids and find a way to still bring in income and use my degrees that I had gotten in education. And so I got into grant writing. At the time, Google wasn't a thing yet. So I couldn't really just look anything up online. I heard of a lady nearby who did grant writing, and I asked her if she would meet for coffee. And so we had a chat, and by the end of our conversation, she said, I'm looking to add a couple people to my team if you're interested. So I jumped at the chance to work with her for a couple of years, and she was an amazing mentor, and I learned so much. And then when we moved away, I branched out on my own, and that was great. But then that opened up all the questions of, how do I negotiate this with a client? How do I charge for my services? How do I do that? Ooh, all the unknowns and things that you have to try and navigate over time. Yes, all the things. And so just trying to figure that out along the way. And then now I had kind of come to a crossroads of, what do I do next? And looking back, I realized there were certain key things nonprofits had in common that were successful with grants. Yes. And also certain key things I wish I had known starting out. So that's why I created the podcast. It's like, this is what I wish I'd had 20 years ago.
Yeah.
When I started out.
I think I've really been pushing the message that mentorship coaching is so priceless. I mean, just having the knowledge, and wise people seek other wise people. So, just learning from their mistakes, and anytime that you can, especially in grant writing, I feel like it's something that is modeled, and it's definitely, like we said, a science. It's definitely an art form, and being able to learn from people that do it really well is, again, priceless.
Absolutely. And that's one thing I've learned about mentors along the way is some of my mentors I've never even met, or they have
Mm-hmm.
no clue that they're a mentor,
Yeah.
but I still learn from them. You
Yes.
just kind of find the ones that you need for that season.
Yes.
And I've grown and shifted and needed different kinds of mentors.
Yeah.
The mentors I need now are much different than what I needed 10 or 15 years ago, but that's okay
Exactly.
because always, like you said, looking for that community and looking for those people ahead of us that we can learn from, whether in our own industry or in
Right.
something entirely different. There's a lot of wisdom
Absolutely.
out there to absorb.
Absolutely. And the people like just like you said, the people that I started with when I first started doing mentorship and coaching have outgrown and grown to other coaches, but that's okay. I think there's a niche for everybody. So and that's what I tell
Yeah.
my listeners, if you outgrow me, that's great. I love it. Go on and
Yeah.
I will send you
It's a
somewhere.
compliment.
It's a compliment. That's amazing. So, I think that's so important. And you do teach grant writing, correct? Through your podcast and you
Right.
offer courses. So
Yes.
we'll get into
Yes, I
that
do.
a little bit later. But um tell me about overcoming your fear and just really leaning into the entrepreneurial journey as you got started in grant writing.
Oh boy. Yeah, that's a whole thing. It took a while to even identify and pinpoint,
Mhm.
but realizing, okay, that's what's consistently holding me back is fear. Like, yeah, I could try this thing or I could do this project that this client wanted, but part of that, maybe it didn't turn out well because I was
Mhm.
afraid to speak up and trust
Mhm.
my instincts and say, this is not in your best interests, or a brand new nonprofit coming to me saying, okay, we got our 501(c)(3) letter. Now go write grants for us.
Yes.
And I wanted to please the new client.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
okay, sure. But now I know that is not in your best interest as a brand new nonprofit. You need to have these other key pieces in place first. And so owning that and trusting that,
Mhm.
part of that comes with experience, but part of it, I had to realize, okay, where is fear holding me back?
Mhm.
And how am I using fear to make my decisions? And that was really had essentially become my filter for decision making. And once I
Absolutely.
realized that and really did a lot of deep reprogramming of my thought process, renewing my mind and digging into what I knew to be true, then I could recognize the fear for what it was.
Mhm.
And, we have fear as a good thing to keep us from
Yes.
falling off a cliff or,
Yeah,
going down
for
a dark
sure.
alley. There are just
Mhm.
certain things that, yeah,
Mhm.
that's a good thing, but not for everything and not for our way of life. And once I realized that and how much I needed to reprogram those patterns
Mhm.
and how much I was afraid of the what ifs and what if somebody sees
Yeah.
me? What if somebody hears me? Why should I start a podcast? Somebody might listen. Why would I do that? And getting over myself and getting out of
Yeah.
my own way,
Yeah.
that was game changing.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. And so it's so funny because like I have the opposite problem. I just jump right in. I have no fear. And anyway, but I typically jump right in and be like, oh, well, okay. So
That's a
but
good thing too.
yeah, I think it takes everybody to make the world go round. And I think so many people do struggle with their fear and they have to get out of their head. They have to get out of themselves, and be able to, it's great that you were able to recognize that fear was holding you back because you can separate it. You can take it and say, okay, this is not healthy, or yes, I'm having this fear, but is it legitimate, or is it just me holding myself back? So I think that's really good. So how did you separate the two? How did you learn how to discern those two?
Oh boy, that was a process.
Yeah.
There was a season I mentioned I was at a crossroads 2 or 3 years ago of just not knowing, like, okay, should I start something new? Should I go
Hmm.
get a job at a
Hmm.
nonprofit? What's next? Should I do something completely different? I was kind of not sure
Yeah.
what to do next. And so really all those unknowns, I dug into a lot of scripture and the
Uh-huh.
Bible and
Hmm.
just looked for promises.
Yeah.
And I had gotten a new Bible in a different not translation, a different version than what
Yes.
I had had before, so that it wasn't like
Right.
automated in my head, and started underlining. And I got a 4 pack of markers that were different colors. And
Hmm.
so anything that was a prayer or a promise, I marked in red. And then green was grace, or, just different color
That's
coding
awesome.
that forced me to actively search and
Yeah.
discover.
Yeah.
And once I started looking for the promises, they're everywhere.
Hmm.
Like they're all over the
Yes.
place. And so
Yes.
really just searching and writing some of
Hmm.
them down,
Hmm.
doing a lot of just copying word for word and ingraining that into my mind
Yeah.
helped those patterns surface more and help those promises surface more than the fear. It took a while and it's
Yeah.
still a constant work in progress.
Yes.
But then the more I separated myself from the fear, the more I could recognize it when it popped up.
Yeah.
And then also, one thing that really helped me was I heard it recommended of naming the thing. Like if
Hmm.
something's bothering you or you're
Yeah.
afraid, if you can name it,
Hmm.
then all of a sudden it doesn't have as much power
Right.
because maybe it was like, okay, I don't know, this whole situation's got me scared. I don't know what to do. But
Mhm.
then it was like, okay, what if the client says no? What if they don't want to do that? I'm really afraid that they might not want to extend our contract or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Then it was like, okay, if that happened, it wouldn't be the end of the world. If they say they don't like it, we might tweak a couple things and then keep going.
Yeah.
So then just naming it removed the whole cloud of fear and pinpointed it to one small area. So
Yeah.
realizing that kind of thing was super helpful. And then also just finding different resources of how I'm wired, like learning about introversion and
Yeah.
highly sensitive people was a
Hmm.
big thing. And even something as simple as like social anxiety and realizing,
Yeah.
oh, that's a thing. And so it's going to feel weird if I go to a huge gathering where I don't know people and I
Yeah.
don't have to be afraid of the strangers. It's just like, oh, okay, it's going to feel awkward
Yeah.
the first few minutes and then it'll be fine.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
just
Well,
getting over it.
self-awareness. I mean, it's just self-awareness,
Yeah.
and knowing that you're realizing that you're an introvert or you're realizing that you did have some social anxiety, but it also, like you said, naming it. I have figured out. I mentally picture it in my mind and I take that word and I just put it in the forefront of my mind and I recognize it and then I send it on its way. And that's just my mental, that's how I process and how I deal with that. But, if I am having fear or if there's something, a problem that I'm having, like you said, labeling it, recognizing it, and then I mentally picture it and say, okay, I'm done with you. Go on. And that's
Yeah.
typically what I do. But anyway, that's
Yeah,
great.
it's like then you can contain
Yes.
it to its rightful place and you can move on
Yes,
from that and
for
not have to
sure.
dwell on it. And so realizing those patterns of where I was ruminating over and over on something or
Yes.
this might happen or what do I do? How do I
Hmm.
act? Instead of all of that clouding everything, it can just be like, okay, I might be nervous for a couple minutes. It's
Yeah.
fine. And also then just starting to do the podcast, I was completely
Hmm.
terrified to do that. But it was also like it just made sense as the
Yeah.
next right thing to do.
Yeah.
And that really helped me too, just showing up week
Uh-huh.
after week for the last 2.5 years helped me just get used to talking into a microphone and somebody might actually listen and that's going to be okay.
Yeah.
That's the
Well,
idea. But
but what made you decide to do a podcast? Like, how did that all come to fruition? What made you decide,
yeah.
hey, I'm going to do a podcast?
Well, after the season of not knowing what was next, like I knew from reading the promises that it was going to be okay. There was something next. I just didn't know what yet.
Mhm.
And so I just started taking the next right step of whatever I knew, as cloudy as it was. And I decided, okay, I'm going to do something. I'm going to make it count. I'm going to make this work, whatever that needs to look like. I'll just go all in. And I took an online course, just a little 8-week course on social media and how to present yourself
Mhm.
online. And she had this little bonus she included of how to start a podcast. And I was like, oh, that's nice of her, but I won't be needing that.
Mhm.
And so about halfway through the 8 weeks, it was like, oh no, I think I need to start a
Yes.
podcast. And so that was like a week or so into
Uh-huh.
September, and I decided to set myself a deadline of October 1st.
Mhm.
Like, I'm going to do this thing because if I wait longer, I'll take
Yeah,
the chicken exit and never do it.
sure.
So I decided to go all in for a year,
Mhm.
do or die, publish every single week, no matter what, and give it a
Yeah.
fair chance. Because in the past, I had tried blogging and
Yeah.
didn't really enjoy that.
Yeah.
And So I thought, if I want different results, I need to try something
Yeah.
completely different. And boy, it was. And it was scary, but I love it.
I
I've
know.
met people from all over the world because
Yes.
of it, and
Yes.
it's amazing. So yeah, it
That's awesome.
definitely was
And so
worthwhile.
you're 2.5 years in now. How many episodes
Yeah,
have you done? Do you remember? That's
125-ish,
awesome. Yeah.
120, 130, getting close,
Yeah.
somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been crazy, but
That's
it's been
awesome.
fun. And then last fall I did a
Yes.
TEDx talk, which if I hadn't done the podcast, I would not have been prepared to
Right.
do the talk
That's
in so many
amazing.
ways.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So
That's
yeah.
great. Yeah. I think I'm coming up on 50 episodes, but I have really
Oh,
enjoyed it. It's been and just yeah, just to show up every week, that's phenomenal. So, okay, so tell me this, how have some seemingly unrelated detours come together in surprising ways for you? So like
mhm.
things maybe you didn't expect, but they've come together and it's been like a wow moment for you.
Yeah. Well, along the way, we moved several times because of my husband's
Mhm.
job, which was always kind of hard having my own business. I mean, yeah, I was remote and portable, but just the time and focus it
Yeah,
takes to move,
sure.
and also uprooting from clients and do I restart? And it's exhausting.
Yeah,
And, with having kids and family
sure.
and trying to get everyone settled, all
Yes.
the things
Oh, yeah,
again.
all the things.
And so at one point, I just all the uphill parts of it, I had gotten a little bit burnout on grant writing, but still wanted to do something remote. And so I started working with a real estate investor on just coordinating some
Mhm.
closings and banks and things like that. And right after we moved here, he called and said, "Somebody just quit. Would you come to work with us full time instead of as a contractor?" I thought, okay, sure, why not? And so
Yeah.
ended up for a couple of years being a project manager
Wow.
and overseeing rehabs, and it was all remote. And
Yeah.
I learned a ton, but it was crazy, high stress,
Yeah.
so much work, and just insane.
That's what I
And
do.
so, oh,
That's
is
what I
it?
do.
Okay.
So I'm a real
Okay, then
estate
you know.
agent. We flip properties. We do all construction,
Yeah.
everything, and this. So it's
Yeah.
crazy,
We did the
crazy.
fix and
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, flips and rentals
Yes.
and yep,
Yes.
all the things,
Yes.
and
Yeah,
getting
I
those
know.
closings lined up and the buyers
Yes.
and yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so it was nuts. I learned a lot because it was remote and gradually I had more people under me that
Mhm.
I was training and even in other countries and coordinating projects and teaching them
Wow.
how to handle some of it. So it taught me how to do some online courses and platforms and things like
Yeah.
that and to get comfortable on at the time Skype, but
Right.
teaching and some of those pieces that before I would have been really scared of. I was
Mhm.
even nervous just being on a Skype call for
Yeah.
a long time. And so, that was funny. But then along the way, they had a few deals go south and things kind of fell apart with their partnership. And
Yeah.
so they laid off almost everyone in the whole company. So then I was
Wow.
like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
And so after, kind of the roller coaster and some crossroads, it was just like, okay, now do I find another job like that? Do I build up my own thing? What do I do next? And I decided if I'm going to work that hard, I might as well be working on my own business and not
Yes.
somebody else's.
Right.
So then that's when all this other part came into play
Yeah.
and realizing I do like organizing systems and overseeing and setting things up and teaching people,
Hmm.
and that's kind of fun. And
Yeah.
I can do that with my own stuff that I've learned along the way and help people learn grant writing and help them be more effective because I can't write all the grants for
Hmm.
all the good causes, but if I can teach other people to do it better, then they can be more effective and get funding for their causes. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, I feel like, I started out, I was a school teacher. I was a stay-at-home mom. Then I was a school teacher. And then I worked for a nonprofit and in our area, and which I was still in education. And I feel like all of those things have led me to where I am now, just like you being in that real estate world. All of those things, God sends them to you so that you know and you can experience, and then they make you where you are now. So it's
Yeah.
really, it's like, oh, wow, now I know, you look back
Yeah.
and you're
Even
like,
when you feel
okay,
like Yeah, it may
Yes.
seem disjointed or you feel like you're in a desert, but it's all building and preparing
Yes.
for the next thing to come,
Yes.
whether you can see it or not, it's still
Right.
there.
And that's something I have to remind myself of a lot is God's timing. And he reveals to me what he wants me to know at the right time. And
Mhm.
I'll know when I know. And it's
Yeah.
hard sometimes. And you're like, okay, I'm really tired of this. Or, when are you going to tell me? But he reveals it when it's time. And everything
Yeah.
is for a good reason. So, anyway.
Right. And I had to learn that too of like, say, even just starting the podcast, it
Mhm.
was like, okay, I need to steward well right now
Right.
with just a few hundred downloads
Yeah.
or not a lot going on.
Mhm.
Because if I don't steward this small thing well, I won't be trusted with more and more.
Correct.
So I felt like even in those unknowns, I had to
Yes.
trust that, okay, there's more coming, but I need to be trustworthy with
Right.
those things.
Sure. Sure. I totally get it. Um, let's see. What would you tell your younger self about being an entrepreneur? If you could go back like 10 to 15 years, what would you tell yourself?
Did
That's
I
always
write that
you
question?
did.
Oh my, what was I thinking? Let's see. I would tell myself, do the things.
Hmm.
Like, just, I mean, I did try a lot of new things, like even
Hmm.
just trying grant writing, but I would say, trust my gut and go for it and do
Yeah.
things. Like,
Yeah.
just lean in and stay consistent. That was the piece. Like, even just testing out blogging or this or that. It's like, I knew I was capable, but at
Right.
times it was like, oh, nobody's really reading this blog, just kind of fizzle out.
Yeah.
But just staying consistent and leaning
Yes.
in
Yeah.
and not letting fear, like we talked about, be such a driver, but
Yeah.
just putting it in its rightful place in the trunk
Hmm.
where it
Hmm.
belongs. And
Hmm.
then, yeah, just lean in and
Yeah.
go all in
Well,
and do the things.
that's great advice. And also trust in your gut. That's something that
Yeah.
I've learned the hard way is always trust your gut. I mean, I just,
Yeah.
you second guess yourself or the fear gets in the way and it ends up being a debacle. And if I would have just done what I felt like I should do in the first place, everything would have been fine. So trusting
Yeah.
your gut, learning how to lean in and doing all the things, that's great advice. Great advice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And even just knowing that sometimes your logic is going to
mhm,
out reason your
mhm.
gut. But
Yes.
if your gut is that, like, it's telling you there's a
Yes.
reason, even if
Right.
all logic says otherwise, sometimes if I
Right.
haven't trusted my gut, I've always regretted it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, learning
Yeah.
that. And along the way, before I started the podcast, someone had told me action brings clarity.
Hmm.
And that just stuck with me. And I use that a lot with my students because I tend to get all up in my
Yeah.
head, overthinking. I have to have the whole plan and all
Yes.
the answers
Hmm.
worked out
Hmm.
first before I jump in. But
Hmm.
it's like, no, I got to do it. It'll become more and more clear as I go.
Right.
And that brings more data, which helps you make better decisions and better actions and more clarity. So it's a cycle that helps keep moving forward and build momentum.
Sure. Sure. So tell us a little bit about your courses, like what you do, what you offer, what if people wanted to learn more about grant writing, where would you say to start?
Sure. Well, of course, I have the podcast, which is free that
Mm-hmm.
if you're just wondering.
Mm-hmm.
And along with that, I have a quiz of do you have what it takes to be a
Yeah.
grant writer, just to help sift through like, where do
Yeah.
you even start? What do you do?
Right.
And then I do have a grant writing basics for beginners course. If somebody's just wanting to learn,
Mm-hmm.
like, what is a grant and
Mm-hmm.
how is it used for and how is it not used, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of walk through step by step.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I have the mentoring and one-on-one coaching
Mm-hmm.
programs and training. And also, I love doing grant writing
Mm-hmm.
workshops as well for groups. And then I work with nonprofits that are needing some help with their grant strategy to
That's cool.
understand. Because with my TEDx talk, I talk about building your ROI framework.
Mm-hmm.
And in the business world, it's a return on investment, but in the
Yes.
nonprofit world, it's more of a return on impact
Mm-hmm.
of where can they make the most impact by investing these funds. So then building that correct framework to have a good foundation for that will help you build the most ROI. So it's kind of encompassing with
Mm-hmm.
that, but really it's helping be more effective with
Yeah.
grants to ultimately impact the missions.
Right. That's awesome. I love that. So tell us where people can find you, and I'll include all this in the show notes too. But like, if you've got anything you're offering right now, or where can people find you?
Sure. Well, my website is teresahuff.com. And the quiz I mentioned, teresahuff.com/quiz.
Okay.
And then, of course, the TEDx talk, if you look up on YouTube, just
Yeah.
Google by name,
Okay.
TEDx, it'll pop up. And I hang out the most on LinkedIn. So
Uh-huh.
I love hearing from people that have heard me on a podcast, and I love connecting and hearing their stories, who's on the other side of the mic, and
That's awesome.
seeing what work people are doing out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's wonderful. And again, it just takes so much creativity, but also, like you said, down to a science to do grant writing. And I thought about doing it one time, but I wish you'd have been around then, because I had no clue where to get started. And
Yeah,
that was one of the
that's
things
what I
that kept
hear the
me from it.
most.
Yeah. It's just
Yeah.
like there wasn't anything available. So I'm
Yeah. So I
super
want to close
excited.
that gap and help people
Yes.
know how to start, because that is the number one question I
That's
hear.
awesome.
And most people are not that far away from it.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
even with your background in
Yeah.
teaching and
Yeah.
real estate and most likely
Yes.
project management, you
Yes.
probably already have a lot of skills you'd need. So it
Sure.
wouldn't be that big of a jump.
Sure.
And once
Sure.
people realize that, then it's like, okay, now you can
Yeah.
create baby steps
Yeah.
instead of a giant leap. And it's
Yeah.
not so scary.
Yeah. I need one more thing to put on my plate.
I'm sure you do. Don't we
You
all?
know, I know. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's what it's crazy. In the last 3 months, I've started 2 new businesses, and continued to do my podcast and build business coaching that way, and then also managing our projects and our properties and everything else that we've got going on. So I'm like,
Because
glutton
why
for
not?
punishment. Why not add
Yeah.
one more thing?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
my assistant the other day, she said, you cannot add anything else, not right now. I said, okay,
Yet.
I'll wait.
Not
I'll
right
hold up.
now. That's the
Right
key.
now, that's the
Yeah.
key. Let me get a few things going
Wait till
first.
summer.
Yeah, I'll be ready to go. So, well, thank you so much, Teresa, for coming on today and sharing your story and everything that you do. And I appreciate everything that you do. And
Thank you.
I definitely will put this in the show notes. So everybody, if they're interested in doing grant writing or maybe nonprofit, I can send them your way, and we'll give them all
Sure.
the details. Okay.
Sounds
But
good. Thanks for having me. It's been
yeah,
an
no
honor.
problem. Do you have anything else you want to add?
I would just say, whatever is on your heart, if
Yeah.
God puts that
Uh-huh.
vision on your mind and your heart that won't
Yeah.
let you go, then
Yeah.
just trust that there is something there and
Yeah.
keep going after it.
Yeah.
Lock in the vision, change your strategies along the way
Yes.
as you need to, but really stay locked in on that
Yeah,
and go
sure.
for it.
Sure. And I'm going to steal your highlighter ideas, the one with the green with the faith and the promises and everything,
Oh,
because I'm a
yeah.
highlighter and I'm a write, I write
Yeah.
and scribble notes everywhere. So I'm definitely going to steal that one. So I think that was a great
Yeah.
idea.
Well, and I
So,
did the blue was like names or descriptions of God.
oh, that's
And
cool.
so, like, there's some really cool,
Yes.
unique names that I had never
Yeah.
thought about, or yeah. So
That's
it's just kind of
awesome.
fun.
Yeah, it is fun.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much for coming on today.
All
And I look
right.
forward to
Thank
talking to you
you.
soon. Okay.
Bye.
So I hope you enjoyed today's interview with Teresa, and I totally enjoyed speaking with her. We had so much in common, and it was so great meeting her and hearing about all the things that she's overcome, what she does to help her community and those around her. So, some takeaways from this: the first is overcoming fears. We've all had them, and it's how we handle them. It's recognizing them, sending them on their way, and redirecting our focus and focusing in on what is good for us. Two, show up, show up, show up, show up. If you've listened to me at all, I will tell you, be consistent, show up in whatever it is that you're doing, and results will come. Even when you don't feel like it, even when you're down, you've got to show up. Thirdly, sometimes difficult paths and roads to unexpected places become gold for us. They take us down paths that give experience, and something I've learned is just savor the moment. Savor whatever it is that you're doing at the time, because there's a purpose for you in that moment, and it gives you some sense of or a takeaway that leads you to another path. So even if you feel like you're not in your niche, it could lead you to the perfect place that you need to be. So just take that moment, take it all in, and those unexpected roads lead us to gold sometimes. So totally look up Teresa, follow her on her podcast, and I know she would love to work with you if you're interested in grant writing. And of course, I would love to work with you if you're interested in working with me as a business coach and learning about the things that I do, and I would love to share with you my nuggets. Then email me, Emily@EmilyJansonMcGrath.com, and I would be happy to do a discovery call with you. They're free. And then you can also work with me on an hourly rate or monthly or even yearly. We've got something for everybody. So give me a shout, leave us a review. That's how we know that you're listening, and also what you would like to hear. You can email me again at Emily@EmilyJansonMcGrath.com or follow us on social media. I look forward to talking to you again soon, and have a great week.